This is what you'll see at the end of this video. I have different objects in my scene. I can go to them. If they're interactable, I press E and then I can interact with them. So this one will change the materials, this one will be deactivated, and this one is a door that will be open and closed. Hello everyone, welcome to this video. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a simple and flexible interaction system for your game. So in this scene I have a player and 3 other objects that I want to interact with, and all these 3 objects have different functions that I want to call. So you see, when you have a big game, you have different objects that you want to interact with them, so you'll need a flexible system to do so. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to edit, and then I'm gonna go to project settings, and then in the input manager I'm just gonna increase 18 to 19, and it's gonna give me a new button which is cancel. I'm just gonna change its name to interact and change the positive button to E. I'm just gonna delete the alt positive button. So this is gonna determine my interact button for me, which is key binding E. And then I'm gonna close it. So first let's create an interface. Create a C# script and call it iInteractable, and then open it up, and in here delete these functions, delete the mono behavior, and change the class to interface, and then define a public void interact, and that's all good. Save it and go back to Unity. In here let's make another script. We call it player raycast interact, and then open it up. So first let's get rid of the stock method and define a few parameters. The first one would be a serialized field, private float, raycast range, because we are going to use raycast and we need a range for our raycast. And the second one is going to be a serialized field, private layer mask. So this would be the selected layer mask for our raycast. In update method, let's first define a raycast. So let's say raycast hit. We call it hit, and then check with an if statement to see if our raycast will hit the objects that we want. So let's say physics.raycast, and the first parameter would be camera.main.screen point to ray, and then we're going to give it input.mouse position, and the second thing would be out hit. The third would be the range or the distance, we would say raycast range, and the fourth one would be the layer mask that we defined here. So in this line of code, it's going to cast a raycast from our camera to the mouse position with this range we defined here. Let's call it 5, and if it hits a collider that has the layer mask that we selected, it's going to return true, and else it's going to return false. Now let's define a variable called hit object interact, and it's going to be hit.collider.getComponent iInteractable. So if there is iInteractable component on this object, it's going to be saved in this variable, and then we're going to check if hit object is null or not. So basically, if the object is interactable. If the object is interactable, then this if statement is going to be true, and then in here we're going to say if we press the interact button. So let's say input, Get button down interact. So if we interact with the object, let's say hit object interact. And now this code is done. And the last thing we have to do is to go in each code of our interactable objects and add the interact and interactable lines of code for it. Now go back to Unity. In here, these three objects are interactable, so I need to define a layer mask for them. Let's first start by the cube. Click on the cube and go to layers and then add layer. Let's make another layer, call it interactable, and then click on the cube again and select the interactable layer. Do the same for two other objects, and then we are going to change their scripts to be able to interact with them. So let's first start with cube. So this is the cube's script. The only thing that we need to do for this to work is to first come here, add a comma and say IInteractable, add this IInteractable interface, and then right click on it, click on quick action, and then it's going to add the interact function for us. Delete this line and just call whatever function that you want for the interact. I'm just going to call this function that is going to change the material of the object for me. I'm going to do the same for any object that I want. So for example, in this door script, I want it to be interactable, so I'm just going to add this interface, IInteractable, and then add the interact function to it. And then in here, I'm just going to call whatever functions that I want to execute when I interact with the door. So it's going to be the toggle door function, and it's going to get the player position. And for the third object, I'm just gonna call the IInteractable function, and in here I'm just gonna call the deactive object. Let's go back to Unity. In here, let's add a crosshair. So go to UI and then add an image. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm just gonna press Alt and click on this. So it's gonna be like this, and then just decrease the width and height to like something like 5, I think would be good. And yeah, this is our crosshair. Now the only thing that we need to do is to click on the player, add the player raycast script to it, and then change the layer mask to interactive, and then hit play. Now you can see I'm in the game, and if I go to the door and click on E, which is our interact button, it'll interact with door, and if I click E on this object, it'll disappear, and if I click E on this object, it'll change its materials like this. I hope you liked the video. If it was helpful to you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next videos.